welcome to Lunchtime Politics. First, the highlights. Nigeria leaders, past and present, meet at Presidential Villa to discuss Naira scarcity, the general election, among other issues. Nigerians continue to find difficulty accessing banks. CBN blames scarcity of new notes on hoarding. Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, challenges PDP governorship candidate to learn more before aspiring to the Lagos governorship seat. Jandor replies, insists he is competent. Plus, U.S. consulate keenly watching the process leading to the general elections in Nigeria gives perspective on youth development. Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Millicent Omoka in Lagos. We kick off with the latest news as President Muhammadu Buhari is currently presiding over the National Council of State at the Council Chamber. The meeting is believed to have been summoned to address the current challenges regarding the Naira redesign and the currency swap policy. Physically in attendance are former presidents of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, Yakubu Gowon, Abdulsalami Abubakar, former President Olusegun Obasanjo joined virtually. Also present at the chamber are the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila. Some state governors are attending physically. They include Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State, Darius Ishaku of Taraba State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos, and Babagana Zulum of Borno State. Others attending include the Minister of the FCT, Mohammed Bello, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. Meanwhile, the INEC Chairman, Mahmoud Yakubu, who is also attending physically, is expected to brief the Council on preparations ahead of the 2023 elections. All the service chiefs and heads of security agencies are also physically present. We'll bring you an update on that story shortly. But for the Supreme Court judgment, today would have been the deadline for the old Naira notes being used as legal tender, albeit there is still currency scarcity. And in Kwara State, like many other states across the country, the pain and trouble is still being experienced over the inability to access the new notes. The CBN, however, has attributed the scarcity to hoarding by Nigerians themselves, which it says could linger if the people do not change their ways.
Port of call of the central bank officials is the palace of the Olofa of Ofa to seek the intervention of the traditional ruler in educating and enlightening the people on the reasons for redesigning the Naira notes.
The situation is going to get better by the time the deadline passes, and we know that we don't have any money to spend for these new Naira notes and our 100 Naira, 50 Naira and 20 Naira that we have had. Everybody must bring out the money. So we just want Your Royal Highness to help us tell the people that they do not have any problem. They should have confidence in the government of Nigeria and have confidence in the Central Bank of Nigeria.
The Olofa does not mince words in expressing the pains of the people, especially the announcement of the extension, which he blamed for escalating the suffering.
When I have 200,000 my personal money that I'm using in doing business, you now say you want to give me 20,000 to buy what? But the increasing number of this for the money that is not available. I think it is better for the Central Bank if this policy must take place right now. They must derive a way to make the Naira sufficient first.
At some microfinance banks where people were seen swapping the old notes with new ones, the people thanked the CBN for the efforts, which they say has reduced the stress. However, the CBN officials blamed the slow pace for unavailability of new notes on hoarding by the people.
In fact, I feel so good good. I was able to swap 3,000 Naira this morning. You don't know how delighted I am. Due to the pressure of swapping and all that, it has been really, really difficult. But this morning, in fact, this is the evidence of the 3,000 Naira I just swapped, and I feel so happy about it. Oh God, it has not been easy. Like, it has been in Ofaye, it has really, really not been easy. You get to queue, you go to the ATM, there's no cash, it's not disbursing and all.
We also now onboarded the microfinance banks. Since they're closer again to the rural areas, our focus is to ensure that all the people in the rural areas are properly served. So they too have been empowered to exchange. You know, we give them ₦1 million every week for onward distribution to individuals.
The Apex Bank insists that the trouble being experienced could linger till the end of the year if people continue to hoard the new notes. The officials appeal to citizens to desist from such acts.
Meanwhile, politicians from parties considered as possible third force in Ekiti State have been airing their views on the current state of the nation's banking sector, the role expected of the judiciary ahead of the elections. A former federal lawmaker, top chieftain of the Social Democratic Party in the state, Bimbo Daramola, at a media interaction, aligns with the Naira redesign policy of the central bank if the move will consume the monster of vote buying. The SDP National Assembly hopeful expresses disappointment at the Supreme Court's judgment that clears the Senate president to contest for another term, insisting that morals must be part of justice.
I believe very strongly that if this is intended to cure a malady that already is becoming endemic, which is vote buying, I totally agree and align with it. Just as I've said at different times, if this whole thing is all about getting a more sane or sanitized society that will allow our elections to reflect the will of the people, I am 100% for it. It will be painful, all right, but we'll bear it so that we can save the society and we can have a society where the right to choose and choose freely is not compromised. I think that's okay. Now, as a politician, it's affected me, particularly at a time like this, for logistics. You know, the other day I wanted to go out, and then all I was told was that I could only take 10,000 Naira. I think that level, it can still be reworked to accommodate basic needs.
The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, has allayed the fears of some of the vice-chancellors, and this is over insecurity, while assuring that comprehensive security plans have been mapped out for the safety of all staff, media, youth corps members, and everyone who comes out to vote. This is as the National Universities Commission, NUC, ordered the closure of universities across the country to enable students to participate in the February 25th and March 11th general elections. To talk more about this, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi is a professor of communications, Deputy Dean, School of Postgraduate Studies with Bayes University, Abuja. He joins me from Abuja studios for more on this. Welcome to the program. In the letter addressed to vice-chancellors of all universities, the NEC directed universities to shut down, suspend academic activities to enable students actively participate in the polls. But it also said the decision came as a result of extensive consultations with relevant security agencies. Now, what's your take on that decision?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and good afternoon, viewers. Well, the times we're in, you know, are very critical times. We have a national event ahead of us, and when we have a national event like this, you know, all sectors somehow will have to be brought in at the level of preparation. And in this circumstance, we're talking about the education sector. And maybe we need to also remember that we are out of 93 or so million registrants that we have for the election. About 26 million of these are said to be youths, particularly students. And of course, if students, you know, are occupying such an important number, it's also good to prepare for them, you know, so that they can exercise their franchise. And of course, we have to remember again that University lecturers, professors are usually critical in the electoral process, whereby INEC uses them, for collation, etc. So it's probably in consideration of these that NUC is thinking that universities should be shut down, in advance of the elections. But I would have thought that before now, enough signs should have been given to allow the universities to prepare for this first holiday. Preparations will have come in the area of maybe cramping up course outlines, or preparing to do some other topics that they probably will be missing at this period of shutdown after the election. It's coming as a surprise. So universities hardly prepared for this, and that's why you have so many programs scheduled for this period will now have to be rescheduled. And sometimes, again, when you have this kind of disruption in academic schedule, it has a way of affecting the pedagogy, the learning process. When schools resume again, they will probably struggle to cover up areas they have missed, and sometimes in struggling, they may just even have to paper over it, without necessarily imbibing or internalizing as much as they should have internalized if there was no shutdown, as the case could be. Overall, we can just be consoled that it's a sacrifice that NUC is asking universities to make. But my argument is that, in asking us to make this sacrifice, a good notice should have been given, to enable adequate preparation, for the misses that universities will encounter in the process. But again, national events are ahead of us. The sacrifice we've been called to make, will probably have no option in the circumstance, Millicent.
And still looking at that report or, circular by the NUC, there seemed to be an emphasis on security, and one wonders if, they feel there might be some security threats. And this is in view of this, in view of protecting the facilities, in view of protecting staff and students, they've decided to do this. So looking as we prepare ahead of the elections, what's your take as, a lecturer of a university with regards to how the country is preparing for the elections?
Yeah, but overall, Millicent, it's been established that election is a multi-stakeholder affair. It's not an exercise that is limited to only the umpire in INEC, that is. We have different set of stakeholders, necessarily involved. Apart from INEC, we have the political parties, we have the security agencies, we have observers, local and international, we have the civil society, and we have the media, etc., etc. So while INEC is doing their own preparation, as constitutionally guaranteed over the last 4 years, other agencies or stakeholders, particularly the security agencies, are also supposed to be involved. So I'm not going to be surprised if the security agencies actually advise the universities or advise NUC to call for the closure of universities. Perhaps they are seeing youths as a flashpoint for crisis, Perhaps they are seeing youths as people who are easily vulnerable, who can be emotional and who can subscribe largely to the psychology of the crowd, falling very easily to temptations to strike. And do not forget that sometimes the election can be very, very emotionally draining, it can be very stressful, and of course can inflame passion sometimes. And students can be very vulnerable. So maybe to prevent some of these things from happening and then snowballing, leading to greater kind of conflagration, they are thinking that it will be okay if universities are shut around this time. But again, like we said, we have acknowledged the fact that it's a multi-stakeholder affair. Shutting down the universities or involving the educational system in the preparation, may not be out of place. But the argument here is that, being the first time that it is probably happening reasonably. I can't remember this happening in the last couple of years or at any election. So being the first time, really good notice should have been given, to enable the institutions prepare, Remembering that in the case of public institutions, universities, for instance, they were on strike for 8 months, I doubt if they have actually covered all they lost in those 8 months, and now they are being suddenly asked to go back home again, over a period of 3 weeks. These interruptions, can actually affect the learning curves. Private universities may not necessarily be affected because they can go online, and that can be gratifying for them. But for the public institutions that accommodate more students, it's going to be unfortunate, if they're going to be affected over the 3 weeks, because of the suddenness of the notice, as the case could be.
Indeed. Just to quickly get your thoughts, perhaps in 30 seconds, and this is also because, the ASU strike is still very fresh in a lot of people's memories. How do we allay the fears? What advice would you give to students as they go on this holiday, election holiday, what to do as they prepare for their calendar afterwards, after the election?
Yeah, but I think what we just need to do is to tell ourselves that we are citizens of this country, and we have a responsibility. It's a period of sacrifice, to ensure that a very important event, important, for the transition from one government to the other, it's at hand. That event involves, the participation of all and sundry. Participation may not necessarily be practical in terms of you going to vote. You're not voting really is a choice, but again, beyond voting, it's also important for us, to be part of keeping the peace, because without peace, I doubt if we can have a free, fair, credible, and transparent election. So we are all stakeholders as citizens, as the case could be, and we have to be responsive. We have to encourage. We have to encourage ourselves to be peaceful, to be orderly, and not to be disruptive of the process, so we can have a seamless transition, and of course, moving into the next administration, as the case could be, Millicent.
We'd like to appreciate your time on the program, as always. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi is a professor of communications, deputy dean, School of Postgraduate Studies with Bayes University. Thank you for joining us on the program.
My pleasure.
Well, still to come, what role is the youth playing in the general elections forthcoming? We have more on that story. Do stay with us. Welcome back. In Lagos, the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, has challenged the governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the state, Olajide Adediran, that he does not have the experience to rule the people of Lagos. Mr. Fashola was speaking at the formal launch of Eko Onibaje 10,000 foot soldiers for the presidential candidate of the APC and re-election of the state governor. He says Mr. Adediran worked with him during his tenure as governor of the state, and that his media experience is not enough to make him the governor win the governorship seat of Lagos State.
You need experience. I did that job for 8 years, and part of what helped me was that I was chief of staff to a governor. I saw it up close, but even then, that wasn't enough. So just following a governor, being a cameraman, and then watching me for 8 years, you think you will now be a governor? You are not ready. Come to our leadership school. You are not yet ready. And that's why you will see their adverts. They are focusing on 51 billion that Lagos is generating. But they don't see the immigrant population that is coming in every day. The bigger the prosperity, the bigger the problem. So their party sees only money. They don't see people. They don't see responsibility. Do you want them to come and touch that money? Sure are you?
Meanwhile, the PDP governorship candidate in Lagos replied Mr. Babatunde Fashola on his claim that the candidate was a cameraman, therefore lacks the experience to govern the state. In a series of tweets, Mr. Abdulaziz Jando Adediran said, "While I insist there is absolutely nothing onto it about being a cameraman, I must apologize to hordes of cameramen out there who have made a mark for themselves." He admits that he was absorbed into the service of government of the Lagos Lagos State Broadcasting Service, but camera handling was not the professional services he rendered to BRF and the Lagos State government. According to him, I really don't know what it is with my Oga and cameras lately. This is reminding me of that famous missing camera he magically found at Lekki Tollgate, the scene of the NSAS massacre. BRF has my respect still, and nothing will change that. Personally, I can't wait to show the residents of Lagos that a lot more can be achieved way beyond what their celebrated over 50 billion naira revenue is currently doing, under the watch of a truly independent governor that has no ties to a godfather's ape on strings. We move away from Lagos to Rivers State. Now, in the aftermath of the 2019 general elections, 6 people were killed in Rivers. Recently, the Inspector General of Police mentioned that Rivers is a state to watch out for in the 2023 elections as regards electoral violence. On the 20th of January this year, no fewer than 3 persons were reported injured when an explosion rocked the APC governorship campaign at a playground in the state capital, with accusing fingers pointed at other political parties. To talk to us ahead of the elections, the Commissioner of Police, Okon joins me now with plans ahead of the election day. Welcome to the program. Perhaps we should start where... Hello, sir, if you can hear me.
I can hear you clearly.
Very well, great to have you. Perhaps we should start with if the culprits to that explosion in January, if they've been found and convicted.
I didn't hear that, please.
Yes, talking about the explosion that we heard about, the campaign of a political party in January. This was January 20th. This is to ask if the culprits have been found.
Yeah, really, we've addressed this issue previously. The campaign, that particular campaign, was convened without any violence, without any explosion. And for the avoidance of doubt, the campaign was in Rumowoji Community Hall, not in the field, as alleged. And before the campaign, 2 factions in the community had altercation because of money that was paid to them by the political party. And so, but when that issue was resolved, the campaign was held and it ended peacefully. Then thereafter, there was a social media publication that said there was an explosion at the party's rally, and the photograph shown indicated that the explosion was in a garage, whereas that rally was held in a town hall. So we have long time debunked that publication.
Mr. Okon, in your thoughts, Rivers State has always been said to be a red zone when it comes to the elections, before, during, and post. So the question now is, do you think that fake news will be the issue, or that, previous violence which have occurred in the state, perhaps some of the things we would likely see in the forthcoming elections?
First, we are not unaware of the fact that fake news will play a major part in this election. From our records, most of the things reported via social media don't really take place, don't really happen. Some are overblown out of proportion. But mindful of that anyway, as a responsible agency, we have set in motion enough mechanisms that will check the rise of violence during and immediately after the 2023 elections.
What are your expectations from the political actors?
The actors are playing dirty, but we cannot be part of that game. we've given commitment that will remain neutral, will remain apolitical. And so, yes, they are playing dirty. We are mindful of that. And so, what do? As much as possible, before any rally takes place, we deploy adequately. And immediately after the rally, we are equally on ground to monitor every situation. So whatever tension may be generated as a result of the fake news that will be spread and the dysfunction of the political actors, I'm sure we will be able to have a peaceful election because we have really done much for now.
Lots of optimism there by the Commissioner of Police, Okon. We'd like to appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you so very much.
To other political stories, the ABC National Youth Wing Campaign Council is asking youths and women in Taraba State to vote Ahmed Bola Tinubu for president to ensure peace, equity and progress of the nation. At a press briefing by the leader of the council, Tukura Kwaye in Jalingo, they insist every youth, woman in the state must ensure they deliver their polling units.
The most important thing is the narrative the youth are prepared to change at this time. And we have taken it upon ourselves, and that is why you can see the faces here today are all our youths that come out in their thousands, because we've realized that for the time past, we've been used, we've been thrown around, and we've decided this time around that we will go for our choice, and we are determined to do that, and that is why you are seeing us coming out in our masses and are ready to make the change to the best of our ability by the grace of God come 2023 election.
Meanwhile, a civil society organisation, Yaga Africa, is calling on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to be intentional in averting and reducing post-election violence that may occur because of result computation across the country. The group stated that in the next 23 days, INEC must, as a matter of urgency, collaborate with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria districts across the state and the FCT to train its ad hoc staff on completing the result sheet at the polling units and ward collation centres to reduce bureaucracy. Also, the governor of Kano State, Abdullahi Ganduje, met with bank managers, representatives of the Central Bank of Nigeria, security agencies and other stakeholders for an interactive session. This is in an effort to find lasting solution to the suffering faced by citizens as a result of the shortage of the new Naira notes and unending queues in banks. The governor added that Naira redesign policy is a good one, but implementation is poorly executed. Hope you've enjoyed the political stories served at lunchtime. Don't forget you can join the conversation on our social media platforms. Well, that's our program this afternoon. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.